And welcome to the Empower Half Hour. It is that time, Frank. It is time for episode 73. How are you, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing great here in southern New Jersey. We have
Sounds outstanding.
a balmy 54 today. How are you making out in Nebraska?
Here at the worldwide headquarters of Road to Awesome in Omaha, Nebraska, I think today we got to about 51 degrees. But
Nice.
you know what's interesting? Here we are in November, and this weekend we're going to be like 65 degrees, man.
Wow.
It's going to be beautiful. I know
Yeah,
and there's not snow on the ground. It's really cool. I like it.
groovy.
Yeah, yeah,
So we,
right
we
on.
got this hot new author on today. Tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
him.
yeah, absolutely. The guy that is all about Aspire leadership, Josh Stamper. Just so excited to have him here. Man, the guy's a school leader. He's involved with the Teach Better team, and of course, he's got the Aspire Leadership podcast, and now, like you said, he's a new author. So let's get Josh in here and have him join us. And Josh, thank you so much, man, for being on the show. How are you?
Oh, I'm awesome with the two of you. What an honor. I'm excellent tonight. So thank you for having me.
Oh,
Well,
absolutely, man.
now
Exciting.
we have to try not to disappoint. That's way too much pressure.
Yeah.
But thanks, Josh. Thanks for coming today, Power Half Hour. We were just talking a little sports in the pregame section of our
Yeah.
show that people don't get to see. We should record that and play it at a later date. But
We really
this
should.
is
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
and big sports enthusiast, as we can
Yes.
see.
Yes. So being a former player, I played for 20 years. I played soccer mostly, but played a lot of sports growing up. And it was actually soccer that got me started in my leadership journey. So at an early age, got to be a captain of a soccer team and got a little taste of it. And from there, it's kind of history. But played in college and still to this day, as you can see behind me, I'm a huge sports fan. Love seeing my kids play and get a chance to coach them every once in a while too in the spare time. So yeah, definitely a part of my leadership story, if you will.
Quick
I tell you
question
what,
for
I
you.
think that's. Go ahead, Frank. You go.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Darren. You mentioned soccer and that captainship and that first taste of leadership. I'm blessed to teach a university course now, and in the student's first reflective paper, every semester, there's at least one student that says, I played soccer, I was put in that captainship role, did not know what to do. So for some people, it comes, they know what to do, they lead by example. And for other
Yeah.
people, they're put in that spot and they're like, yeah, let's run hard.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
why don't you hit that up a bit?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, as an early age, it was more by showing by example, just hustling and trying to show that I wasn't going to give up, try and give words of encouragement. And that was kind of how I led at an early age. As I got older, I felt more comfortable with my skills and what I could offer beyond that. And so, having an opportunity my senior year in college to be a captain, it was one, an honor, but two, I didn't want to disappoint. So, it was more of being a servant, but also directing and making sure I was prepared every single game and being someone that can be leaned on, not only physically, but mentally also.
So Josh, I gotta ask. Let's stay on the sports theme, and honestly, let's stay on the
Sure.
sports theme as long as we can. I think there's nothing wrong with that at all. But directly behind you, our
Yeah.
viewers can't see unless you step aside. There is a signed Kevin Garnett jersey, and of
Yeah.
course, certainly, KG won a title when he was with the Celtics, but
Yes.
spent most of his career, of course, graduated, drafted right
Yeah.
after graduating from high school to play with the Minnesota Timberwolves, and I think that's the jersey that's behind you. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, how does a guy who lives in Frisco, Texas, have a KG jersey behind him? Tell me a little
Sure.
bit about that.
Yeah, so I got to go way back because I was born in California. So when I was 10 years old, my parents decided that we were going to move. Cost of living, as you all know, is pretty expensive in California. And so we were just barely making ends meet. And so we decided we were going to take a 2-week vacation and go around the United States. And wherever we liked the most, we were going to move there. And we hit Texas and then we went straight north to Minnesota. And then we stayed in Minnesota for a week because we just loved it so much, and went back to California 2 weeks later. We were permanent residents of Minnesota. So from the age of 10 to 27, I grew up there. So that's what I consider home still to this day. My mom, my sister, my grandma, they all live in Minnesota still. And so a lot of the memorabilia behind me, including the Kevin Garnett jersey, is just my love for Minnesota sports. It's a lot of heartbreak, gentlemen, but I'm loyal for sure.
Yeah. Totally understandable. I mean, I hung out in Michigan last week with some folks, including Dave Schmittou, and
Oh,
all those
Dave.
poor Lions fans, man. They would probably kill
Yeah.
for what you have, being a Minnesota fan. So
Yeah, the Lions are tough. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a different fandom in itself. So,
it really is. Yeah,
yeah.
it's
But
like
KG, I mean,
self-inflicted pain.
KG is one of that is my favorite player. Growing up, he was someone that I want to emulate as far as the passion that he had every single game, and he brought it. There wasn't a game that he took off. There wasn't a practice he took off, and that's something that I feel like no matter what your position is, whatever your field, like that should be your mentality. When you go in, you're lacing up the shoes, and you're putting your mindset to like pushing everything else to a side, and going in trying to do the very, very best to serve the people that are around you. And so
Yeah.
I just thought he was an inspiration growing up. Still to this day, he's my favorite player. So to have a signed jersey
Yeah.
in my office is an honor.
Yeah, you
I
know
think
what?
it's awesome. And
You kind of skipped over we just took a 2-week vacation, landed in Minnesota, so that's where we decided to live because the cost of living in California was so expensive. That was that's
it
kind
sounds
of
like they never turned east and headed for New Jersey at all, Frank. Sorry.
No,
no,
we never
no,
went east.
Yeah,
You
they
could-
cut the
hey.
country in half.
you could have been a Sixers fan. That's right.
I could have. Yeah, I know there's a lot of amazing states on the east side, but yeah, we never went that far. So
Yeah. So-
it's kind of crazy the way that it ended up, but it ended up well.
That
So
trip in itself had to create a lot of leadership opportunities that you learned at a young age and carried with you.
Yeah. So as far as like growing up, I think there was a lot of change. My parents, of course, tried their very best to provide for the family, but a lot of hardship came with that as far as trying to find jobs. And a lot of times every year, the go Sixers. So with that was moving a lot. And so for me, still to this day, change doesn't really bother me because my reality changed often. We moved a lot. And that's something I think as an assistant principal actually kind of helps me because as you all know, I kind of think of it being an assistant principal as kind of triage, right? Where you never know what you're going to walk into, but you need to save the day, right? So to be able to be flexible and understand that my to-do list that's made probably isn't going to get done today. However, I will make a priority to get those things done when I can, but I need to make sure that I'm able to morph into whatever I need to on that day and make sure that I'm finding the solutions to the problems that are presented to myself. So, that change, although it was sometimes difficult growing up, it did, I think, help me as an adult.
when you talk about the assistant principal role, that is, I think that is of all the roles that I've held, teacher, assistant principal, principal, superintendent, that was the role that you had to be the most flexible and the most like on your toes. And, I mean, you think about, let's just continue to run with the athletic theme, as a soccer player, as a basketball player, as a tennis player, no matter what athletic event you're involved in, even, Frank, being on a skateboard, I mean, you're up on the balls of your feet and you're ready to pivot at any moment in time. And so, I think about, the two assistant principal roles I held, and man, it was constant pivoting and being ready to shift and go in a different direction. Principal, I had a little more control. Superintendent, I had way more control. But man, that role, maybe expand on that for a little bit for people who just don't know what it's like to be the assistant principal.
Yeah, I mean, it's encompassing everything, right? We have our hands in every aspect, and I think of it as the principal being kind of the visionary piece, where the AP is the one working and trying to find the pieces and the logistics to make that vision a reality. And so with that comes a lot of, I love it because I get to touch every aspect of the building, but sometimes it's more difficult. Like you said, a radio call can change your day completely and can change your week completely because of, depending on the severity of what's occurring on the campus. So I'm one that I don't like to be stuck in a chair or stuck in a room for a long period of time. So for my personality and the way that I work, I think it bodes well for me because I'm not defined by a bell. I'm not defined by, a road schedule that's going to happen every single day. I don't know what's going to happen. I might have an understanding of some of the meetings that will occur, but beyond that, I know that something unexpected will occur and it's never a dull day. But as far as the roles, I mean, obviously student discipline is part of that, teacher evaluation, safety and security, that's the majority of those components. Of course, the instructional coaching that goes in there also, making sure the departments that I'm over is doing the right thing as far as teaching strategies and assessments and standards-based grading and all those things. So yeah, I literally have my fingers on every aspect of the building.
I never heard it put as triage. That's a great synonym. I can now say vice principal. When I had the opportunity as well, and I equate it to dog years, meaning that you jam pack 7 years of your career into that 1 year as far as your experiences go. Because as you say, you're doing it all, and those proactive times when you can reach out and in more of a leadership role are the ones that kind of solidify everything as you're going through those triage moments.
That's for sure. Yeah. So I mean, it's trying to find the best solution in a quick period of time. So I think the dog years is actually a great metaphor also, because all that white hair you see on my chin really came when I started becoming an assistant principal.
Yeah, see, mine came when I started having children.
Well, that kind of coincided with mine too. So yeah, there might be something to that.
So I'm sure the viewers are interested, as we all are. So how did the book come along? We, Darren and I, we've talked extensively about how ours came along. How did yours come along?
Yeah.
No, that's a great question. So I have a podcast that's been going for 3+ years now. And through that time, just having an opportunity to meet with a lot of different leaders, I mean, it was inspiring. But while I was doing that, I also was involved with leadership programs to kind of help those aspiring leaders. And what I was finding was, one, there was a lot of folks out there that wanted information. They wanted to be able to learn how to become a leader, but they didn't have anyone to help them mentor or give them opportunities to get outside of their classroom. And so they were just seeking information. They were like sponges. And so having that happen consistently with people wanting to become a leader, but not knowing how to get to the next step, really just kind of gave me a mission of putting something together, looking at my own journey as an art teacher to an administrator, and what were kind of the pitfalls that occurred in my own journey. What were some things that I felt were beneficial to help me prepare to become not only a building leader, but an administrator? Because you can be a leader at any position on your campus, but it's different when you actually have that assistant principal role. And before that, I was a dean of students. So, just talking through teacher to dean of students to assistant principal, and then as an administrator, what are some characteristics that are needed to make sure that you're successful?
And what do you consider what are your top characteristics or qualities? Where you put it that you figured it out, because some of that is on the job training, and you can't get it out of a textbook. You can get some of it from conversations, but until you're actually in the trenches, it's not the same.
No. So the 3 terms I used was empathy, creativity, and passion were the 3. And so for that was empathy was one I thought a lot of people don't understand how that's needed, especially in the role of assistant principal, and how putting yourself in other people's shoes, and especially with student behavior, understanding that behavior is a language and they're trying to tell you something. So instead of just reacting and, you know, punishing a student or reacting to a teacher decision, you know, trying to uncover underneath what truly is going on in their life. A lot of times teachers are struggling, and it's because something that's going on at home in their own life that's pouring onto the campus, and or vice versa with the students, right? The students are maybe they weren't fed at night, or they didn't get any sleep, or, you know, maybe the parents are going through a divorce. There's a lot of reasons our students are struggling in the school building, and we need, as leaders, to have that empathy to understand that there is a reason behind those decisions. And so if we're just saying, oh, these are bad kids, or this teacher is just a terrible professional, like that's not going to help us in our leadership role. And so, you know, just talking through that piece, the creativity, like understanding who you are as a leader, and having that ability to think outside of just traditional practices, and having confidence in that. And then the passion piece, I kind of talked about it with KG, right? I mean, if you don't have passion in your role, you're going to get burnt out very, very quickly in an administrative role where more pressure and more things are put on your plate. That if you don't have passion and enjoy what you're doing, then you're probably not going to be in that role for very long.
No, that's absolutely the truth.
Darren, should you or should I? I'll
you know what? I always do it, so you do it.
That big empathy piece, what I heard you say that whole time was building relationships.
Boom.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's true.
100%.
Yeah, because if we don't build a relationship, a lot of times we don't understand what's going on in the child's life. So, or teacher. I mean, honestly, anyone in your building, you know, it doesn't matter if it's a custodian, a cafeteria worker, bus driver. I mean, it's all the same.
100%.
So, yes.
100%.
100%. So Josh, I got to ask you this, and Frank, thank you for going there with the conversation. I think, I mean, obviously we all know that that's totally what it has to be about, that we have to focus on building relationships. But, you know, you just mentioned, you know, whether it's a custodian or a bus driver or a teacher or a kid, what are one or two things that you do, you know, on the day in, day out, even though, yes, you are in triage, firefighter mode. I mean, whatever phrase you want to put on it, because they're all appropriate, especially in the AP role. What are some strategies you use so that you don't lose sight of building those relationships every day?
Yeah. So since we got the sports thing, I'm going to go back to soccer, right? So I like to use this as an analogy is, when you play soccer, a lot of times you don't realize that even though the match is 90 minutes long, on average, you only touch the ball for a minute, 30 seconds to 2 minutes. And the reason for that is because in each possession, if you have it longer than 3 seconds, most likely you're getting knocked over and the ball is being taken from you. So you got to trap it and you got to move the ball to someone else, right? So I like to relate that to the administrative role in the sense that a lot of times our interactions with our teachers and with our students are not very long. Although the day is 8 hours, you may only get a couple seconds with each person. So you need to be intentional, and you need to make sure that it's something that's going to be long lasting. So it better be a positive conversation, a positive interaction, because you're not going to get a lot of time with those folks. But it's very similar in that sense. So I just like to make sure that I am touching as many lives as possible, even if they're 3 seconds long, 10 seconds long. It might just be a smile and wishing them they had a great day, and trying to do that with as many people as possible. I hate being in my office for very long. So, you know, sometimes I'll just pop into a classroom, pop into someone's office, and they're like, oh, you know, do you need something? No, I just need to get out of my office and I want to connect with someone. So I'm doing that right now. How are you doing? You know, I'm trying to figure out what's going on in their day, because without establishing that each day, you know, you start to lose those relationships and start to break down because you haven't been in front of them. You haven't asked them a simple question of what's going on in their world. How can you help them, right? So even though it may not be a long period of time, I definitely want to make sure I'm making an impact, even if it's just for 3 to 5 seconds.
Man, I got to say this, that, you know, I've heard all kinds of analogies and thoughts and strategies, and I'm not even a soccer fan, but I got to tell you, that may be the absolute best analogy, the best way of thinking about just getting that short, little, quick touch with everybody. Oh man, Josh, I just love that. That is absolutely, like, I mean, like my mind is blown right now. I absolutely love the way that you phrase that. I think that is just absolutely incredible. And
Thanks,
you know,
Tim.
I think that's, for anybody who's listening, or watching the replay, man, that's critical because, our guy Joe Sanfilippo, has said it. We never know which interaction is going to be the one that people remember us for.
Yeah.
And it could be that 3-second interaction, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
totally.
man, you
So
got
I've
me
gotten-
fired up with that, man. That's awesome.
I got a card from a kid a couple years ago. I'll be honest, I didn't know him very well, but I did say hi to him in the hallways, smiled, asked him how his day was. But as far as the relationship goes, it wasn't very deep. I'll be very honest. But he wrote me a card at the end of the year and said, "Thank you so much for making my day so many days. It was just about your smile." And like, you just don't understand the impact of something so simple. It's easy on a tough day to not smile and just get to where you need to go from point A to point B. But to get a card, it really resonated with me. Like, something so simple can make such a great impact. So, making sure that those interactions are something that's positive, even when you're not feeling it on that day.
Man, that's awesome. I love that. It's outstanding. So
3 seconds, unlike basketball, where you can hog the ball the whole time.
24 seconds.
do you remember when they used to call 3 seconds in basketball? I mean, I know that probably hasn't been called in forever. That whole 3 seconds in the lane thing.
You know what? The other day I was watching a game and they called defensive 3 seconds. I'm like, what? Yeah. That's a thing?
That's a thing now.
It's
because they allow zone.
It's a thing. Right, exactly. Because old heavy guys like Shaq and Barkley used to just camp in the lane. That's how they could breathe.
Yeah.
So
I thought you were going to say like Frank and I, but thanks for not going there.
No,
you and I just no. We play long distance like horse and stuff, from 1,500 miles apart, So let's talk a little bit more about the podcast. You mentioned that you have the podcast and just reviewing it one more time. Today getting ready for the show, and I was fortunate enough to be on your podcast last summer, this summer, I guess. But man, me not included, man, you've had some heavy hitters on that podcast. When you got started with that, and you said it's been a little over 3 years now, what was kind of your thought with that? How was the flow of that gone? And what are some of the things that you're really like hitting right now in that podcast?
Well, it's kind of morphed into something, right? As probably all of our journeys have. It was based on those leadership programs I was starting, trying to give some content, because when I was doing those programs, the thing that resonated with folks the most, or the ones that were asked, was bringing in guests to have them ask questions, for those leaders, bringing building principals, bringing folks from the district office in, trying to show them the opportunities that they may want to have or aspire to eventually. And those folks got to ask really, really potent questions and get in kind of to the nitty gritty of things. And they always came away just like, that was the best thing. The panel interviews, do that again. And so I started to think, well, what if they were recorded? What if I was able to ask amazing leaders throughout the country these questions and then just provide it to someone? So I went and visited Todd Neslony down in Nova Soda when he was a principal there in the elementary school. And when I got there, he was recording Without Him Welcome for the Kids Deserve It podcast. I sat down quietly and just kind of witnessed the greatness that was occurring in front of me. And as soon as they were done, I shot like 1,000 questions to Todd and was like, whoa, what is going on? What is this podcasting stuff? And, he gracefully, of course, answered all my questions. But that really was the time where I was like, what if I did that for leaders or aspiring leaders, because of, all these questions these folks had? And Todd was great and said, definitely you should do that. So it took me about 5 months of getting the confidence and saying, okay, I'm actually going to do this, get everything set up, learn how to podcast in the first place, all the logistics, right? And then from there, it was just like trying to reach out and find folks that were inspiring to me. And so I used Twitter kind of as my first avenue of like reaching out to folks. And honestly, educational leaders are just amazing. For the most part, when I asked, would you be willing to be on the podcast? Even when I had 1 show, 2 shows, like very little shows out there, a lot of people said yes. And so I was very scripted at first because I was so nervous to talk to these amazing folks. And now it's, you get a little bit, it's easier to have those conversations now. And as you go through that experience, where it's a little more free flowing like we're doing tonight. So yeah, it's kind of morphed from just doing interviews. Now I do a show also with Jeff Gargas from the Teach Better team. We do an Aspire mailbag, so folks get to send in their questions and we answer those questions for our listeners. I work with Sarah Johnson, where we do Aspire to Rise, where we're actually talking with an aspiring leader. They give us a problem. We kind of coach them through to kind of give them a little more direction in their leadership journey. And then, of course, I've got some bonus episodes too. So I've lost count of how many episodes, but it's getting close to, I think, to 250 with all the bonus material. So it's been a phenomenal experience. And of course, it led to my book, Aspire to Lead.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's cool. And then spin that forward. So, the whole thing kind of got sparked by a conversation and being there with Todd Nelsoni. And of course, you mentioned Adam Welcome too, another rock star. And then it ends up being Todd Nelsoni that wrote the foreword for your book. So, I mean, that's just, talk about just spinning it forward, man. That's just so cool.
It is cool. He's a good friend, and it's funny. I pitched the idea of him doing the forward years ago when I had the idea for the book, and he's been a sounding board for years. And he, of course, was like, "Yeah, I'll write the forward," and he kind of said yes without really thinking of it. And I actually created the cover for my book, and so I sent him a mock-up, and it said "Forward by Todd Nelsoni" on the cover. And so he texted back like, "So, are you formally asking me to write the forward?" I was like, "Buddy, we talked about this years ago. Like, you've already said yes." So, of course, I had to ask him again.
And you can't take it back. Yeah,
you can't take it back. So, yeah, he graciously, of course, wrote it.
Where can
that's
people
awesome.
access your podcast? Where can they access your podcast and your book?
Yeah, so if you go to my website, joshstamper.com, both links are there you can listen to the podcast on my website, but, if any podcast app, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, any of those, you can find Aspire, the Leadership Development Podcast. And then the book is sold online, Amazon, it's on Target, Barnes & Noble, so a lot of different places. If you're looking for like a bulk order, you can go right to edumatch.com and order through there with a discount for 10 or more books. So those are all the avenues you can purchase the book.
Sounds absolutely outstanding. And obviously it's off to an incredible beginning with the book. So we're really excited to have you here. And,
Thank you.
Like Frank always says, this is the fastest half hour of your week. And sure enough, that half hour has evaporated in front of our eyes, which brings us to our final thoughts. And so, leading off our final thoughts, I think we're going to let Josh lead us off.
Final thoughts. I hope that you're understanding that, like we talked about with building relationships, it's making sure that every interaction that we have is one that's going to be memorable, even if it is just for a short period of time.
That is excellent. Let's see. I guess I'll go next. So my final thought for this week, I just want to go back to something that Josh said as we were talking about relationships. And I know we talk about relationships constantly on this show, but man, it's just such an impactful thing to hear, that 3 second or that 5 seconds or whatever it is during the course of a day. We never know which interaction is going to be that one that people remember us for, or that one that makes a difference for them. So just every interaction you have the opportunity to have with a person, whether that's in your school, it's in your classroom, it's at the grocery store, it's out on the street. I mean, whatever it is, be intentional to be focused on making that a positive interaction. Right now there's so much negativity in our world. If everything we do is intentional about bringing positives forward, it's only going to make a huge positive impact on our world. So that's my final thought. Everybody have a road to awesome week. And Frank, I'm going to throw it to you.
Peace and love always win. You just threw Josh out there on that final thought like you were asking him to write the forward for your book, Darren. I mean, you just threw him out there. But anyway, Josh, after having this conversation with you, I have eight core words that I live by, but I might have to add a couple of more because of the thought-provoking conversation, not only that we had pregame, but during the show. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, I didn't read your book yet, but I will. I'm headed to that website, or I'll just probably get it from Amazon. But man, brother, stay doing what you're doing, because we need people like you. And even if you're on the street and you see that person and they look familiar and they say, nah, wrong person, have that conversation anyway.
Peace and love always wins.
Always.
Everybody get out there, have a road to awesome week. Thank you so much, Josh. Great to see you, my friend. I hope everything continues to be absolutely fantastic for you down there in Texas, and continued success with both the podcast and the book, man.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Frank. Appreciate it.